You faded away, and woe is all that remains, and I have gone astray, my mind full of fury and stains. I'm carrying a seed of insanity, a burden of faded memories. Underneath
And now it's time for my personal judgment about the third figure of the series. 03 Chou-Shinka-Tamashii-Series, Keramon, Diablomon, or Digivolving-Spirits-Series, Keramon, Diablomon. A warm welcome back to you all! Since Chou-Shinka-Tamashii is the original Japanese name, I will continue to use it more often than our name. Also here again, while judging this figure, I will going back to official statements and my personal prejudiced assumptions and statements that I made about in my update videos, which I made to every new announcement about this Chou-Shinka-Tamashii series promotion page. Bandai, Tamashii Nations and the creators say themselves officially that with this figure series they strive to be the ultimate transformable Digimon figure series for adult collectors. Because of this official statement, I will also be very strict in my judgment here again. However, these statements are not so important here because you do not have an old transformable figure for comparison to judge the possible improvements by comparing the old to the new figures. Here. No! Here we are entering uncharted territory as Bandai Tamashii did themselves with the third figure. Since there was never an old transformable figure of Keramon Diablomon in any form before. And so it was very surprising for me personally when they announced that the third release of the Digivolving-Spirits will be the big enemy from the first Digimon movie with the original title Digimon Adventure Bokura no War Game. And that they just picked this character was unusual for me because I didn't even know that Diablomon in particular has such a big fan base, and that of all things this Digimon should be honored by making such a new transformable figure of it. Well, Bandai Tamashii Nations also showed this painted prototype Diablomon figure some years ago, but they have never made it officially and released it. Later they again showed of this version of that Diablomon figure, somewhat different in the coloring style under the name Figure Arts, together with the two Bokura no War Game figure versions of Keramon and Omegamon, which in this coloring style did not make it to the official final release as well. Though Diablomon at this time and with this coloring style would have fit perfectly with the two other Bokura no War Game figures. Therefore, it may not be so surprising that Diablomon was released as a Digivolving-Spirits figure then. From the molds and the shape of the parts, I would say that this painted unreleased prototype figure of back then was not necessarily used as a template for the creation of the Chou-Shinka-Tamashii figure, because they both look too different in the molds to me. Personally, I never really liked Diablomon's character design and it was always a bit too bizarre for me, but it also somehow matched the movie's theme as the embodied computer virus very well. Excuse me please, I meant computer virus, of course. And that's why I didn't personally wish for Diablomon as a new Chou-Shinka figure, but for one of the other, for me, much cooler characters. But as I said, this is only my personal taste, and tastes are known to be different, and I wasn't aware that Diablomon had such a big fan base that he would make it into a new transformable figure. And despite my rather personal lack of interest in a new transformable Diablomon figure, I already admitted in my update video about a figure that despite the fact that you have no reference to an old figure version here, the figure from the first images looked very much impressive. And I actually meant that honestly and personally, and by no means objectively. The third figure of the Chou-Shinka-Tamashii-Series, Keramon Diablomon, was released in Japan on the 24th March 2018. Since I had only discovered the Nippon Yasen shop just a short time before, at this time I had also pre-ordered the figure in a German shop as the last one, I think. But because it was cheaper again at Nippon Yasen, I cancelled this pre-order in the German shop too, and also ordered Keramon Diablomon from Nippon Yasen. This time too I got the figure home after a short wait. However, Bandai Tamashii also announced with the official update about their third release that this third figure will be a little more expensive in price than the other two, which of course was and is absolutely understandable, since they had to invent a completely new figure in terms of engineering and had to develop it without having an old version here as a template. I think that this slightly higher price from seeing the first pictures until holding the figure in my hands absolutely justified, and nothing has changed about this. Or respectively is justified. Yeah. I have to admit that the hype for this figure was not quite as high as for the two previous figures. For me personally, I maybe brought it over in my update video differently, but as I mentioned before, I am not so a big fan of Diablomon's character design in general. But with the promotion, also Bandai Tamashii didn't make it as easy for us to say no to this figure as well. And I found the implementation of a transformable figure of Keramon Diablomon from the first official pictures as very successful. This made it clear to me from the beginning on that I would buy this figure, despite the fact that I do not like the Diablomon character design, but I also wanted to support the other promised much more interesting announcements for me for this new figure series, so that these great promises at a part of Bandai Tamashii can also become real. And at that time, the hype was overshadowed by the quickly following update of the Diablomon Digivolving figure, and generally got intensified by both. So there is actually nothing more to say about it in general, and that's why we now go straight into the judgment. First again a little bit about Keramon's form. Again, it is pretty obvious that they sacrificed the look of the pre-evolution form for the better look of the higher evolution form, which in my opinion was a very good decision again, and yet Keramon's form also looks quite acceptable, and I believe it could not have been done better here too. To be able to implement a transformable figure of Keramon Diablomon much differently. The figure in Keramon's form measures about 7 inches without the antennas. I personally think that the overall image of the Keramon form looks very successful again. It can definitely be recognized as Keramon, at least it is fairly flawless from the front, and as good as it was possible to implement. But in general, Keramon's form looks very rigid, stiff and sterile, because apart from the arms, hands, fingers, hip and antennas, you cannot move anything else because of the simple body shape and the possibility of implementation. So you can just put the figure in this form on the supplied stand and just can pretty much like this way have it sitting on your shelf. By the way, the arms and hands are transformed the same as those for Diablomon's form. Though there is not a lot of Keramon's original character design this much noticeable in original, it looks a bit more natural and flexible due to the type of tentacle things on the lower part of the body than the figure in Keramon's form does in reality. At least the tentacles got hinted the best way it was possible with these molded on details in the lower body sections, respectively on the lower body sections. But more was not possible, and that's why Keramon's form looks very rigid and stiff and somehow somewhat flat with this kinda of somewhat unmovable chunky bottle shape. Well, yeah, it is what it is. If you turn it around, you have many different colored parts and molded parts and details of its other Evo form on the back, which have the coloring for Diablomon's form, which is logical, of course. Because they also have to go somewhere or respectively must be present. And you could say that from the behind view only the head and shoulders have the actually accurate colors for Keramon's form. Everything else from behind view has Diablomon's colors and molded details, but from the front it is very pure and free of kibble parts of Diablomon's form, which has been very well implemented and succeeded. Diablomon's fingers could be very well hidden and folded under the hands and fingers of Keramon, so that they are barely visible from the front, and from other angles you also can always turn the hands that way, so Diablomon's fingers are always get covered by Keramon's hands. The two colored arms can also nicely be turned that way, so that Keramon's form always can have the right colored arm parts on the front, so that you always have a pure Keramon form, at least from the front view. The different color applications are also impressive, and Keramon's form got according to the original character design very well, and with the matching colors and color tones detailed colored. And a few typical and important features and details of Keramon were taken into account with the according nice paint apps. What I particularly like the most are those big green, somewhat creepy staring eyes, and they got implemented very well. Also, the serrated yellow ruff got indicated with the extra part on the left and right side, which is great, and therefore it looks as if the serrated ruff actually going around the back, even if these side details of the ruff are a little too high situated due to the transformation joint underneath, but I made the best of it. The arms are very well articulated, also thanks to the transformation joints, of course, and they are attached to a plastic bridge with a die-cast ball. Up and down movements are possible with the entire arms at this hinge joint. In addition, the arms are rotatable at the biceps and elbows. Through this is more intended, this is more intended for the transformation and should always remain rather in this particular position. Otherwise, if you turn the arms too much, the other colored arm halves of Diablomon's form logical coming up, and therefore the wrong colored halves for Keramon's form, which in turn makes the rotation at the biceps and elbows at the same time a bit senseless. We also have double jointed elbows that help to give Keramon's its natural arm position and form. The hands are also on such a pack with a die-cast ball, so with the hands movements in all directions are possible. The hands or fingers themselves, as you can see, have this flap-like design, each with 2 hinge joints, so that you can indicate them for Keramon. Excuse me please. So that you can indicate for Keramon this typical hand and finger position, so you can angle the fingers how you like. The thumbs are again extra on a short ball pack, and just let me say, at the hand angle there is another hinge joint which makes the thumbs very poseable. Then, as I said, the hip can be rotated, but actually only because of the transformation. The antennas can also be rotated to the left and right at the base, on this molded on ball, and at the banded section above they are again extra hinged, so that you can adjust, bend and pose the antennas as you wish. However, those are also the transformation joints. The head itself is not articulated due to the transformation system. As I said, the figure is in Keramon's form just what it is, and still got as good as it was possible in combining with the transformation ability to Diablomon, very well implemented in my opinion. What I have to mention is that at the beginning I didn't get my copy properly and flush closed at the bottom section, and that the figure kept splitting apart. However, this was a mistake on my part, because apparently I had done something wrong and did the legs and feet of Diablomon's form underneath not properly and precisely angled and positioned as it's supposed to be, because now it works great. Since I initially thought something wrong, that it could be a mistake of my copy, and I only got it completely closed only by strong compression and pressing, unfortunately, and as you can see, the Diablomon's parts got color abrasions inside, because it unfortunately caused them, because of rubbing against each other too much through the strong pressing. I only wanted to mention this because the figure does not have these color abrasions in the normal case, and was very clean on those sections as I got it. Let's get down to the Digivolving. According to the instructions, Keramon can be digivolved into its impressive Mega or respectively Ultimate form Diablomon in roughly 14 transformation steps, and the instruction sheet itself has become more valuable for Keramon Diablomon, because it is now made of a kind of glossy photo paper, which makes it look better, where the transformation steps have now been highlighted somewhat better and in color in the single images. The instructions of Wargreymon and Metal-Garurumon are, as you can see, only made of simple matte printed paper, as well as they are only black and white prints, as well as the instructions of the old Digivolving Digimon figures were. Again, a positive new upgrade here. This is how we get into Diablomon's form. If Keramon's form is what it is, and as I said looks very rigid and stiff, it is the more impressive what emerges from these Keramon when it is transformed, which at least outsiders would not necessarily expecting and suspecting. Namely, and perfect, almost Keramon kibble-free Diablomon figure. And I already tried to get more and more enthusiastic about this figure in my update video due to the barely recognizable kibble, by even saying at this time that this Keramon Diablomon figure from the first images could be probably the most successful figure in both forms from the front of the 5 presented figures up to that point, and as far as it could be judged until this time back then. Well, I wouldn't go that far anymore, but it is definitely one of the best figures in terms of having no kibble on the front in both forms and the right proportions. Diablomon's form from the front almost looks like a flawless, non-transformable figure arts Digimon figure, only alone through the incredibly good sharp-edged proportions of the single body parts. And of course, also because of the great and detailed painting. Tough painting here is perhaps also the wrong word for it, because here the colors more and mainly are the molding colors of the plastic, which were used for the most part for the coloring here. And that with the painting mainly counts only for the middle part of the chest and especially for the head, because Diablomon's form has the most paint apps on the head. And all of this can be achieved through a fairly simple but at the same time ingenious transformation system. It is also the very first figure of the Chou-Shinka-Tamashii-Series that skips 2 evolution forms, which clearly pays off here in order to be able to perfectly implement both evolution forms as best as it was possible. So Keramon makes a warp Digivolution, if you want to call it this way. And if they had gone from Infomon to Diablomon for the figure, that would probably have been much more difficult to implement and probably would have looked not as good by far as this result they could create with Keramon Diablomon Evolution Way here. So there should be no complaints about choosing the wrong way of evolution here, because the end result speaks for itself. And when you see Diablomon's form from the front, the figure is more reminiscent of a figure arts Digimon figure, and it is actually unbelievable that it is a transformable figure. Diablomon's form manages to hide the head halves of Keramon's form under his huge shoulder armor, which doesn't really sticking out downwards or to the sides very well. This also applies to Keramon's form's hands, which act as these for both forms and are turned around for Diablomon's form and can be folded up nicely under Diablomon's upper hand structure, so that they are even less noticeable under his hands than it is the case with Diablomon's folded claws in the other form. As I said, the arm parts you wish to be turned around the way so that the correctly brown colored arm halves for Diablomon's form are at the front now. Therefore, the skin color change for both evolution forms, as it was officially promised by Bandai Tamashii, has been reproduced as good as possible by the perfect transformation technique. And you really have to say that at least Diablomon's form got absolutely perfect succeeded. If you consider that it is also very perfect and fairly free of Keramon kibble parts from behind. From behind on Diablomon's form you only have the wrongly colored arm halves of Keramon's form logically, and the halfway wrongly colored and wrongly detailed shoulder armor parts, and of course the 2 folded back Keramon body parts on both shoulder armor parts. These are the only 2 sticking out and striking kibble parts on each side of Keramon's form. But folks, I found out something when I had a closer look at the figure for the judgment here, and what you will also see yet in this video. As you can see, you can actually fold these Keramon kibble parts the other way around if you fold the double hinge in the opposite direction to that it was intended by Bandai. So you can simply fold these parts, which are annoying for Diablomon's form, downwards on the sides of the shoulder armor so that they don't have to sticking out the significantly way on the back. There's actually enough space under the shoulder armor parts for the two outer and inner parts of each side, so I don't understand why Bandai Tamashii didn't do it officially this way too, because it works flawlessly and easily with the other parts if you fold and flip it in the opposite direction as Bandai intended it, and as you see, so you can fold and hide the outer Keramon kibble parts under the outsides of the shoulder armor parts. So these parts are more on the side of the shoulder armor and kinda also hide and cover the inner life of the compressed Keramon parts and sections of Keramon's antennas better, thereby my system fulfilling another purpose. With the inner parts on each side, which are facing more towards the middle of the back, it is a little more difficult to do, but works with the same folding in principle. However, you cannot do it before, and you have to bring the shoulder armor into the almost correct position for Diablomon's form first, before you snap in both shoulder armor parts into the two slots. Before snapping in, you can fold those kibble parts down, and then you can fold them nicely under the inner sides of the shoulder armor, and to that you also can hide them underneath. Then you bring the shoulder armor parts into the end position and snap them into the provided slots, the same way as you should do it official. As I said, there is enough space underneath, because even with the parts folded underneath, on the insides the shoulder armor can be brought into the intended end position for Diablomon's form and can be snapped in nicely, as it also normally works without the parts folded underneath. There's nothing in the way, and it works just as well and as it is officially intended in the normal way. You just cannot do this before, because otherwise you can't get past the folded together head halves of Keramon's form. But with my described technique, it is super possible and everything fits nicely underneath. Nothing getting pressed together, so that you do not have to be afraid of color defects or of rubbing of color and the different parts below. Because as I said, there's actually just as much space down there as if it had been officially intended to do it that way. By the way, this does also not limit the range of movements with the shoulders and arms actually this bad, well, just a bit. So as I said, it is very incomprehensible to me that Bandai Tamashii did not officially done it that way too. Didn't they even actually not notice that it was possible this way, or did they want to keep the transformation system more simple? That's a pity, because the result is now a completely kibble-free rear view, which contributes to an even better look of Diablomon's form. Now you only have half of the wrongly colored arm parts and half of the wrongly colored and detailed shoulder armor parts from the back view. In Bandai's way, you can see the folded Keramon kibble parts from the front too, because they're sticking out very significantly. With my technique of folding them under the shoulder armor, they are completely gone. And you only have a small corner from the outer parts on each outer side of the shoulder armors, which sticking out a bit, but that's okay and looks more like such typical transformation joints and looks 1,000 times better than in contrary having folded those two parts onto his back, this much noticeable on each side, at least in my opinion. It undoubtedly gives Diablomon's form even more figure arts Digimon figure feeling, even from behind. If we now ignore the incorrectly colored arm halves and the half incorrectly colored and detailed shoulder armor parts for Diablomon's form. Therefore, I coming back to the statement from my update video, could that be the best made figure in both forms? So I would not say that for Keramon's form, since in this form it reveals a lot of features and details of the higher evolution form on his back from the behind view. But for Diablomon's form, I definitely have to say that this form could have been this at this time so far. If we look at it in terms of accurate proportions and in connection with my little downfolding trick to make this appear the last big and the actually only kibble parts. With this awesome Diablomon with its almost uniform figure arts figure-like proportions, even Metal Garumon's form of the new figure series can't keep up due to the different sized front and rear body parts. But to be fair to Metal Garumon's form again, you must of course also say that due to the transformation ability of Diablomon, the feet of him in general are still a bit too slim and too small, as well as the red spikes on the back if you now compare the transformable figure in this form now to the Diablomon's original character design. And yes, it also has these slightly larger gaps on the sides between the actual body and the outer transformation joints, and yes, these slightly different lighter blue transformation joints itself, which by the way have been very well integrated into the general body design due to the special design and molding. You can also see something shimmering through of Keramon's body part on the left and right sections next to the chest armor. And the two beautifully molded strands of hair on the sides should also more accurately hanging down from the back of the head and neck, and not should situated on the sides of the head. But hey, it's just a transformable figure. And those facts I wanted also only to mention because I said kinda bad things about Metal Garumon's form as a compare, and to be fair to him again, I wanted to mention those things which are also not as perfect on Diablomon here, which despite its in general almost perfectness due to the transformation ability could also not be implemented this accurately here. But still, for a transformable figure, Diablomon's form is incredibly well proportioned. Whatever, if Diablomon can maintain the status to be the almost best Evo form so far, under the above mentioned points, along with the still missing characters at that time, and considering the time when I made this judgment, remains to be seen. And for that, Diablomon's form can collect several plus points. However, what I complain about Diablomon's form is the missing of his complete bushy hair. Yes, of course, it was hinted with the yellow colored section on the back of the head and the sides, and well, yes, of course, because of the ability to transform it was not possible to represent it the most accurate way. Yes, it is logical, but hinted is really the right word for it here, and I would also limit my words here again to pretty much something like just hinted very slightly, because the section that is supposed to represent the hair along his back is simply smooth and just colored yellow, and even if it was not possible to implement it much more accurate and plastically, what is also logically, in my opinion, the surface could and should have been designed a bit more detailed and at least could have been molded a little more hair strain like, so that it looks not just as the smooth yellow surface, but to make it look and noticeable something more like hair. I think you know what I'm meaning with that. It's a shame that they left it so smooth, because so it's hardly or not at all recognizable as its hair, and I think most of you will surely agree with me that it could have been molded a little bit better, or am I wrong? And I have to admit that when I held the figure in my hands for the first time, I hadn't even recognized the section as its bushy hair along the back. Since I'm not so much a fan of Diablomon characters design in general, and I forgot about Diablomon's design in the movie back then. And when I got it after a few minutes, also by looking at the great artwork on the box, oh, the yellow painted section over there should represent the hair along the back. Oh, alright. Oh well, hey, that they solved brilliantly, because this hair section also acts as Keramon's serrated ruff, at least in the lower section. Maybe that's the reason why they would rather not have it look like hair, because it would not look this great for the representation of Keramon's form. For the neck brace then, well, you can argue about that, but I fully believe that only the lower section of this yellow colored section acts as his ruff, so at least above the section it could have been detailed a little more like hair for Diablomon's form, because it would not have been noticed for Keramon's neck brace, and Keramon does not look so accurate from behind anyway. And all this again under the strict view that the figures of the series, according to their own official statements, should be perfect for critical collectors. And with this fact, they once again do not fully stay true to their own statements. There simply has to be a point deduction. Diablomon's form measures in his, for him, natural pose about 7 inches, just like the figure in Keramon's form, but of course, that depends on how you pose it. If you stretch the legs out more, longer, it becomes logical bigger by far. But for this Diablomon is more this bent leg pose natural, and this kinda frog-like sitting pose, you know what I mean. I had already agreed to Bandai's official statements about the paint job in my update video, when they wrote that the paintwork was used down to the smallest details, also on their third figure. And of course, these statements also getting confirmed through the paint job of Diablomon's form. Well, Diablomon now doesn't have that many different paint apps, because he mainly has these 2 colors as his main colors, but if you look at the head, it also has a few. The eyes are appearing so special and absolutely remarkable, because they are colored in such a detailed and accurate way, with a total of 4 different colors. Just wow! The eyes appear very realistic and absolutely accurately implemented with this type of telescope eyes, which are just so typical for Diablomon and give the figure that kinda insane, crazy look, like its original character design in the movie's head. The designer team undoubtedly did a great job here on the eyes, and it even looks better than on those 2 Diablomon prototype figures. And the other head details are also wonderfully and clean painted in detail, as you would wish. The same applies to the clean paint job in general, and the quality of the paint job is figure arts level again. What I also like very much is how great they designed this type of crystal on his chest, which got also absolutely beautiful succeeded. Now we coming to the joints. Even the head is very well articulated, even if you would not necessarily suspect this, and for this very reason, because you would not necessarily suspect it. It is attached to a ball pack, and therefore movements on this ball are possible in almost all directions until body parts getting in the way. The bushy hair strains are each on such a ball pack, which is why they are very poseable. Even the horns can be turned backwards or forwards, and so you can pose them how you wish. The hip in Diablomon's form is no longer rotateable. This is blocked by the transformation joints, which bring the shoulder armor upwards, and those block the hip joint on both sides from the outsides. The same applies to the arms, as I explained earlier about Keramon's form, because they act as arms and hands for both evolution forms at the same time by just turning them around. What should be mentioned in addition about the hands is that, as you can see, every single claw finger can be moved individually or connected with a double ball pack, which makes each claw finger incredibly moveable. Of course, this is also the reason because that all are the transformation joints at the same time, which making the claw fingers so nicely foldable to hide them for Keramon's form under Keramon's hand structure, but so they also fulfill another purpose for Diablomon's form, namely that the hand claw fingers can be adjusted perfectly to the ground and angled how you personally like it the most, which is really very positive. The legs or thighs are each attached to a bridge with a molded on die-cast ball similar to the shoulders, so that movements in all directions on this metal ball are possible, as we were already promised in the official advertising texts, so that the parts that need the strength they're getting from these die-cast balls. Furthermore, the legs are rotatable at the thighs just above the double knee joint. The legs are rotatable and are also rotatable again below the knee joint. As already mentioned, he has double knee joints. As you can see, they have a fairly clean and decent design. The entire foot construction can be rotated at the bottom of the leg. It is a kind of double joint or even triple joint on which the feet can be moved up and down again, and the feet can even be tilted to the right and left again. Where in terms of joints and incredible articulation, the figure in Diablomon's form looks more like a figure arts Digimon figure. Well, of course, he also has these many legs and ankle joints because of the ability to transform, because some of these joints are also the transformation joints at the same time, but nevertheless, implementing it in such a way that it works is quite impressive, isn't it? What also has to be mentioned is that all joints are very good and tight, maybe not quite as tight as on the first two figures, but still strong enough for the relatively high body weight and a massive upper body compared to the thin legs and arms. The figure is able to maintain the set fighting poses well. What is not necessarily a must, of course, due to these size ratios, and is therefore very positive, and for being a transformable figure, just great. As a support, you also have the adjustable stand, which, as I mentioned earlier, can be used for both evolution forms, if I mentioned it earlier, which is a further plus point to make the joints more durable over a long time. So this is a very good idea. So let's get into the die-cast parts on Diablomon. Apart from the die-cast ball joints I have mentioned so far, according to Bandai Tamashii's official statements, the face parts of the chest armor and those mentioned joints should be made of die-cast. That's also true, roughly. However, I suspect that only the upper half of the face is die-cast and not the lower jaw or respectively the lower section under the welt seam. For this section I would say that this is made of plastic. It's pretty hard to figure this out. I always try to feel the die-cast parts because they feel always colder than the parts that are made of plastic, even at a normal room temperature. Then the chest armor is made of die-cast, and this refers to the entire dark blue colored up and down folding part where the head is attached on. I think you know what I mean. The beautiful crystal itself is made of nice translucent green plastic, but also has a somewhat metallic effect, which is due to the fact that the lower components are made of metal, as you can see here. As for the horns, I cannot say it exactly, they somehow feel like as if they were made of die-cast, but firstly, that was not officially said. Secondly, it's not advised on the back side of the box, and they also feel warmer than the die-cast face half. Therefore, thirdly, I tend to think that the horns are made of plastic, probably only feeling and looking like that because of the great paint job. So, with the die-cast parts we come to the same result as it was described and promised in the official promotion text back then. However, they wrote in their text that the translucent part of the base should be also made out of die-cast, which was logical to me at that time already, that it is of course not die-cast, because how in the world could die-cast parts be translucent? Hey, yes, and of course that's not true. All parts of the stand base are of course, as you can see, made of translucent colorless plastic. No idea what this statement in the official promotion texts should mean then, but never mind. What was also often highlighted in these texts was the clock, known from the first Digimon movie, which comes as a bonus part to Diablomon as promised. It is also made out of die-cast and got also nicely molded and colored. As you should have already seen, this clock can also be placed on the front of the stand for a nice display. In the update video I couldn't say anything more about the meaning of the clock in general, because it has actually been many years since I saw this movie. But I have now researched for this video and found following out for everyone who should not know it so exactly anymore too. While Keramon and Metal Garurumon are battling Infamon on the internet, and Infamon evolves into Diablomon as the battle progresses, the many email requests from the children around the world who have heard of the fight disrupt the connection. As a result, Taichi's father's computer crashes down, so Tai can no longer help his partner and Diablomon escapes. Shortly thereafter, Izzy receives a message from Diablomon asking Izzy for the time. As a result, Diablomon starts a 10-minute countdown and begins to multiply. Izzy learns that from the US Department of Defense, a nuclear missile was launched that would hit Tokyo after the countdown ends. The reason for the launch of the nuclear missile was of course Diablomon himself. Yes, and that is the reason why the figure comes with this clock as a bonus. Now a few final words about the box. As it was also announced to Keramon Diablomon update, is the box of their third release again a blind box, and as announced as its cover it has the illustrations of the respective two characters by Digimon designer Kenji Watanabe himself. As I said, this design will also be retained for the other upcoming boxes. On Keramon Diablomon's box you can see the cool illustrations from Kenji Watanabe. Who could have guessed it? Yeah, of Keramon and Diablomon of course. The box is again matte, this time mainly with purple as the basic color, and only the illustrations of Keramon and Diablomon printed shiny again. Otherwise you have the die-cast evolution logo on the left front again, which is highlighted in shiny silver. Then you have the title for this figure series in white on grey background, Digivolving-Spirits, including a little larger in Japanese the title in Japanese, Chou-Shinka-Tamashii, and Digimon Adventure Children's Wargame, Keramon Diablomon 03 for the third release of this figure series. Among them, very small something in Japanese, Bandai 2018, made in China, to the right, illustrated by Kenji Watanabe. And in the lower right corner, the Digimon Adventure logo, the red spelling among this maybe is the original title of the movie, I assume, and below this, the Bandai and Tamashii Nations logos are printed. The lid is, as you can see, only matte purple and white glossy printed, in the middle again in a similar form, the title Digivolving-Spirits, Chou-Shinka-Tamashii. Digimon Adventure Children's Wargame 03 Keramon Diablomon. And on the left and right of it, a shiny light purple printing of the silhouettes of the figures of Keramon and Diablomon. On the left side you can see a product image of Keramon's form, and above it the shiny white title again, this time without the printed 8 crest symbols, but with some printed on patterns and symbols from the movie. On the right side a product image of Diablomon's form, and again the same white title. The matte back side shows the great promotion image from the official promotion page, with all sorts of labels and explanations in Japanese, which I cannot read. The diecast parts are advertised again, so the design is similar to the previous boxes. Again the title on the top left, this time printed in shiny purple, Digimon Adventure Children's Wargame 03 Keramon Diablomon. Right on the opposite again matte blue, Digivolving-Spirits, Chou-Shinka-Tamashii, and below the printed on diecast evolution logo. To the left of Diablomon, apart from the promotion text in Japanese and even in English, which briefly explains what Digivolving-Spirits or Chou-Shinka-Tamashii-Series is, a few English warnings at the left bottom, and on the right opposite again shiny printed image for the next release. Next lineup 04 Digimon Adventure Tailmon and Jawomon, with the well-known beautifully promotion image of them. On the bottom the warnings and notes again in Japanese, the printed Toei seal, and on the right in shiny blue the title again. The really interesting thing is hidden on the lid flap again. I had the following translated again by my good female WhatsApp friend, who actually knows Japanese very well. But this time they printed something different here. She told me if you translate it, literally it says, "Who has the clock?" Which of course is supposed to be an allusion to the movie. Based on her statement, I also thought that it could mean that it could also be interpreted as "what time is it?" But she just said if you translate it, literally says "who has the clock?" Well, anyway, very interesting to know this, and they were very creative, I have to say. On the left side flap with Diablomon on the and the crest symbol is again pretty much the same written as on the previous boxes. That you should cut out the crest symbol, because at that time Tamashii was still considering to do a kind of campaign in the future where proof of purchase of the figure is needed, and then this cut out crest symbol is then the required proof of purchase. On the right side flap, this time Keramon asks us to fill out this survey, which also includes the Tamashii web logo and the web address. Again the same like on the previous boxes. From all these facts I just mentioned in the judgment, I think that this completely new designed transformable figure Keramon Diablomon, as I said a few times before, got very successful, and without a doubt they managed very well with these two characters to conjure up a transformable figure that can again be regarded as another solid masterpiece, which especially in Diablomon's form knows how to leave you impressed. Because in this form it is really great, with the design, the shapes and sharp-edged almost perfect proportions, which get further reinforced by hardly any kibble parts from the other Evo form, and thereby not getting defeated by the figure design of a non-transformable figure arts figure. Therefore, this Keramon Diablomon figure should not be missing in any collection, I think. And I think you already noticed my enthusiasm for this figure, despite the fact that I don't like Diablomon's character design in general, and my enthusiasm is not played for you either, or so. No, it is real, and this judgment was not objective at all. But I think you noticed that at some point. I would see this new series of figures as a fusion between the most up-to-date transformable figures and the Tamashii figure arts figures in short. For me, these are fully articulated Tamashii figures with a wonderful sharp-edged and well-proportioned design that can be transformed. Also here on Keramon Diablomon, the further feature remains impressive, that just like on the figure arts figures, you see no screws and screw holes and stuff like that on them. And that should now be seen again as a comparison to the old Digivolving figures, which were intended to be for children. Therefore, the price for Keramon Diablomon, which was considered too high by some, again, which is still slightly higher than the prices for Agumon, Wargreymon and Gabumon Metal-Garurumon, is more than justified, I think. Again, you should think about the limited possibility of being able to implement these characters as transformable figures at all. I think I presented another fair judgment here about the third release of the Chou-Shinka-Tamashii-Series. So, and now I think that I have talked about everything that was important to say about Chou-Shinka-Tamashii-Series 03 Keramon Diablomon, or Digivolving-Spirits-Series 03 Keramon Diablomon. As always, many thanks to you for your attention who followed me until at this point now. I'm looking forward to present you the fourth release of this figure series in the next video, and of course this video will be dedicated to Chou-Shinka-Tamashii-Series 04 Tamon and Diablomon, or Digivolving-Spirits-Series 04 Keramon and Diablomon. If you liked this video too, use the thumbs up button and subscribe to my channel. Well then, people, peace out, and until the next review video, your Mega 88 1000.